Summit that took place late last month that evoked the issue of immigration of youths or persons from the African continent out of Africa in search still of greener pastures. To evoke this, ladies and gentlemen, before we unveil our panel, we shall welcome first of all this report done for us by the news desk of 4U Media Africa.
Ahead of the celebration of the Youth Day celebration, Cameroon's President Paul Biya voiced his concerns about the growing desire among the country's youth to migrate in search of greener pastures. He highlighted the dangers of this obsession, particularly when it affects individuals who are well integrated in their local communities. President Biya emphasized that while Cameroon faces challenges like many other nations, immigration should not be seen as the ultimate solution. He urged the youths to understand that despite their aspiration to leave, Cameroon remains a welcoming country with abundant opportunities. President Biya cautioned against the illusions and dangers associated with immigration, underscoring the significance of recognizing the potential for growth and development within the nation. It should be noted that airport security officials in Douala, the economic capital of Cameroon, had previously noted a concerned trend of widespread immigration among Cameroonian civil servants, including nurses, teachers, and security personnel. The president's message came on the eve of the Youth Day celebration, where he urged the young people to be patriotic and get engaged in the life of the country. This year's Youth Day was commemorated on the theme Youth, Import Substitution and Economic Patriotism for Cameroon's Development.
Thank you immensely, the technical department, for that report done for us by Widow Van Berry. Like we mentioned, it's time for us to uncover our panel. And with me in the studio this afternoon is Dr. ASONG Michael Kuma, who is a member of the Rwandan Bar Association and a member of the East African Law Society. We should note that he's equally a politician. Greetings to you, sir.
Greetings, madam.
It's a pleasure to have you on board. Just to reiterate that we are equally joined by Dr. Stanley FONGOD, a Pan-Africanist, and of course a Cameroonian based in the diaspora for this topic of discussion. You're welcome on board. Okay, before we welcome Dr. Stanley FONGOD, we shall just dive right into discussions. But then I would channel the first question to you, Dr. ASONG Michael. Now, what is your general overview of this year's address by President Paul Biya to the youth?
Well, by this we can see a total dissociation between our leaders and our youths. This clearly shows that the leadership of Cameroon is blatantly unaware of the difficulties youths face on a daily basis. And it's not only that which we have as an issue, but also we also have as issue the fact that the government has not even realized that it has a responsibility towards the younger generation, and that it was its role to make sure that the youths are well followed up, catered for, nourished, so that they can actually participate actively in the development of Cameroon. What we see today are youths who are completely discouraged of the present situation in which Cameroon finds itself, who have no trust in their government, and as such, they don't even consider themselves to be that active force that has to bring true development in Cameroon. So these are things that we see on a daily basis, and it is a common attitude of Cameroonian parents where when they realize that their children are having issues or are not walking the right way or doing what pleases them, they begin to question their children instead of questioning themselves. Every parent has a responsibility to make sure that the child grows up in the right way. And I think that President Paul Biya, who is a grandfather, acts as a parent to not only Cameroonians, but to youths. We look up to him as our leader, as a parent, as someone who is supposed to help us to actually have that individual development which we desire, and not only an individual development but a collective development amongst youths that will help us prosper our nation. But that is not what we see today. So we simply realize that there is a blatant disconnection between our leaders and the youths. That's what I can say about that.
Now, speaking of youth emigration, which President Paul Biya evoked during his address to the Cameroonian youth, we should note that it's not just a problem facing Cameroon, it is a continental problem. And now, with regards to his message, what do you have to say with regarding what he said on Africa, or Cameroonians most especially, actually staying back in the country and not moving in a bid to develop the nation?
Well, what I have to say is this question is a very difficult question. And when you discuss among youths, you realize that there are so many reasons why youths, not only in Cameroon, but all around in Africa, moving out to search for greener pastures. We know that Africa today, and not only Africa, but Cameroon, has been stricken by the influence of neo-colonialism, which has also influenced bad governance. And bad governance in itself has taken so many forms. We have had constitutional coup d'etats, where leaders decide to amend the constitution several times so that they can stay longer in power. We have had situations of embezzlements where we have leaders who embezzle more than 50 billion francs CFA, others even 100. And we are not only talking about a leader, but we are talking about several leaders who have embezzled a lot of money that could be used to develop different sectors that could actually encourage youths to actually express themselves. We have seen cases of corruption. Corruption not only for particular services, but we have seen corruption particularly for entrance examinations into certain professions, whether be it in higher education, whether be it in medical schools, whether be it for the military, any domain in which youths could highly access. We have seen situations of not only active but passive corruption. We have also seen situations where youths have been very creative, smart in their manners and in their thinking, and they have come up with ingenious projects. But unfortunately, these projects have not been financed. At the other hand, we have people who, because they know others, have been granted those privileges. So when we look at all these things, when we look at the situations having to do with favoritism, tribalism, which actually are things which we find in our society today, very common, especially in the Cameroonian society, we realize that the youths have actually lost hope in the system. And of course, you know, when you are in a particular environment and you are not able to express yourself, it's very natural that through survival instincts, you will search for other places where you could easily express yourself and you could be valuable to your population or to your society. And I think it's all about that, because youths nowadays are trying to do a lot. They are looking for opportunities to be able to express themselves. But the conditions or the political environment in which we find ourselves today in Cameroon and in Africa does not grant them those opportunities which they could actually make use of to express themselves. So what do? The youths, being smart, intelligent, and hardworking, have to devise means to be able to fight for their personal development and for their own sustainability, and not only for them, but for those around them, family members, and even friends. And that's why so many Africans today have realized that their services, their wisdom, their knowledge, their intelligence can be more valuable in other nations. And here we are talking about foreign nations, Europe, America, and Canada. And that's why you see all these youths migrating towards these countries, because they have realized that by going to these countries, they are being given the opportunity to express themselves, and they can feel themselves empowered, feel themselves important in that society. So the few who went and actually benefited from the favors or the opportunities that were being given to them by these foreign nations, of course, called their friends back, their brothers and sisters back home, and told them,
And we see a
you
mass
know,
exodus.
exactly, you know, this is what is happening here. You could make it well here. You are hardworking. You are this. At least you will not lack a daily meal. You will not lack a habitation. You will not lack a car. You will not lack basic necessities. And that is why we begin to see this exodus of Africans going towards these countries. And another phenomenon has happened because these countries have realized that Africans are very smart. So what are they doing? They are taking advantage of our political environment to actually conduct some sort of brain drainage. So they are pulling out our brains and using our brains for their own development. And that's why when you look at every sector of development, when you look at top organizations today in the world, you realize that Africans are having a permanent and suitable positions in this organization. And that's because the world is beginning to realize today that what was being taught, or that what was being thought of during slave trade and during neocolonialism, that the black was an inferior race, that blacks were less intelligent than the whites, is not what is actually being experienced on the ground. So today the world is realizing that blacks are smart, that blacks can participate in the development of the world, its sustainable development, and that blacks can bring in or chip in a lot. So it's rather unfortunate for us that due to all of these circumstances which we find in our different African countries, because it's something common, all what I listed or said before is what we shall see in every African country without distinction. And that is why Africans have said to themselves, and particularly the youth, that we are going to find a way, and the way is going out. It's very difficult. On the other hand, we could say that if all of these youths go out, then who stays back to develop the nation? It's quite complex. But at the same time, I think that the two could cooperate and work together. That's the diaspora African youths and the local African youths could combine their forces. I always look at it in the sense of there is an advantage going out there, but those going out there should not forget where they are coming from, should not forget that they have an active role to play in the development of their countries, and that they should not forget their countries. It's true, they left their countries because things were difficult, because they were not favored, there was a lot of injustice in the political environment, but yet they should always remember that we are the leaders of tomorrow. We must know that the destiny of Africa and Cameroon lies in our hands, and that we must always think back that even if we are out there, we have a responsibility and a civic obligation back home, and look for means, if not able to come back, but to be able to put in place mechanisms or institutions that can actually favor development in our home countries.
Definitely, like it said, the youth are the future of the past and they are the future of the present. And now you said rightly, before we proceed, now what we're talking of immigration, or better still emigration of Cameroonian as well as African youth, we should equally look at the education system in the continent. Now, looking at this, could we say that the education system, the present one on the continent, or most especially in Cameroon, accounts for this rise in youth emigration across the nation and, of course, the African continent?
Well, that's a very tricky question because when it concerns education, we are going to realize that most youths who left African countries, and particularly Cameroon, and went abroad, actually excelled. In the sense that in whatever study they engaged in, they actually succeeded and actually came out with flying flags. So now the question we are going to ask ourselves is, are they succeeding because we have a good education system, or they are succeeding because they have been placed in an environment that permits them to be more productive? But I strongly believe that it goes both ways, because when we want to look at our education system in Africa, and particularly in Cameroon, it is very, very tough. It's very difficult. We realize that, I'll take for example, I studied law at the University of Douala. And frankly speaking, to have a 12 average at the end of the school year was something almost impossible. But when I left I had my degree and I went to law school in Rwanda, I began having 17 average, 18 average, and even in the final bar exams, I had a 95% pass mark. So now, the question I ask myself is it because in Rwanda I had better conditions, or is because the education system in Cameroon was really tough, and that actually incited in me some sort of hard work? So I think that first of all, the good thing we have in our education system is that it actually encourages our youths to be very hardworking. So you need to be very hardworking to succeed. Now, but on the other hand, our education system has an issue because it's more theoretical and less practical. So automatically, when youths in Cameroon have degrees, practice-wise, they are lacking. Knowledge-wise, they are very good. Smart, intelligent, but practice-wise, they are lacking. And that is the reason why when they leave Cameroon and go to foreign countries, and now they are being granted an education system which actually puts both aspects
theory and
practice, then Cameroonians excel. And I think that that is one of the reasons why we excel. And more to that, based on the type of educational system and environment, it permits Cameroonians to be able to express themselves better. So one thing I want to say about the government of Cameroon concerning the type of educational system they had put in place is that, for me, I think it's not a bad one. It should be credited for at least for one or two things, that is ensuring that Cameroonians are very hardworking. But on the other hand, it is lacking in practice, because most Cameroonian youths with degrees don't have much practice wisdom or know-how. So it becomes a little bit difficult for them to have jobs, and that is why today you see we have so many degree holders but who find it hard to have jobs because practice-wise they are lacking. But that is not the only issue with unemployment. There are other issues that come in place like corruption, tribalism, favoritism, and all the like.
Okay, thank you immensely. We just got indications that Dr. Stanley FONGOD is with us. Welcome back, sir. Please, could you unmute your mic? You're welcome on board. We're still getting some technical challenges with regards to getting from you. But all the same, just hang in there. We're going to see how to resolve the problem. So we'll get back to you while we get some stability in the problems that we're facing, that's facing Dr. Stanley. Now back to you. You've identified a lot of lapses which are facing the education sector in Cameroon, and those, especially those, and reasons why, most especially why youths prefer to leave their countries and go abroad for greener pastures. Now, how do you think the Cameroonian government, having identified these respective lapses, can be able to address this?
Well, the issue with the Cameroonian government is that we have an aging gerontocratic government, and who have always thought that their way of doing things are correct. They lead us as dictators, they lead us as kings and princes, and they don't expect us to contradict anything that they are saying. And that is the problem we are facing today, because no matter the advice you're going to give them, they are not going to take into it. We have been having this same government for over 40 years now. And for 40 years, they have not been able to assure political stability, peace, economic development, and stability for the youths. And I don't think it is today that they are going to do anything better for the younger generation. So for me, I will clearly say that have spoken, so many politicians have given their points of view, have told them to ameliorate the governance system, have told them to fight against corruption, has told the government to fight against favoritism, tribalism, which are things which we find on a daily basis in our society, to create more jobs, to stop investment of public funds, or to attribute them to those who really merit. So we realize that all of these things have been spoken of. Others even talk of the lack of meritocracy, because today in Cameroon we realize that we are being led by people who don't even merit to be in the positions where they are. They don't even have the know-how or the competence necessary to govern us. But these leaders are placed there, and they rule poorly, and of course we have all what we have today. So it becomes very complicated. I think that the only advice I can give to the government is that they should leave and let another group of people come in to rule this nation, because for over 40 years and what we are seeing today is that nothing has really been done, and it's quite shocking to see that they are surprised of the things happening in Cameroon. They shouldn't be surprised, because they are the cause. They have been there for 40 years, and because they have held on to power, because they don't want to leave power, because they don't want to listen to the cry of the population, here we are today. So it shouldn't surprise them. I think what is best for them is that they hand over power to a younger generation ready to take their responsibilities at hand and take Cameroon to higher heights.
Speaking of the future of Cameroon and the future of the African continent, let's dive right into this year's theme that actually had something peculiar. It spoke of youth import sufficient economic patriotism for Cameroon's development. I'd like to focus on that. Now, what do you understand by economic patriotism? And definitely, how can that affect, or how can that influence youth immigration?
Well, it's quite funny, because I don't know who are those who choose all these themes, because this is quite far from the reality which youth actually face today. It's true that when we talk about economic patriotism, we are talking about all those aspects that has to do with the generation of income for the well-being of the population. So it will have to do with producing more, participating in producing more, so that we can actually have products which we can sell to the world, whether it be products, whether it be services, so that we can sell to the world and generate income. We all know that for a country to have a balanced economy, it requires that this country should import less and export more. So the economy of a country is based on its capacity to produce and export more than what it imports. So if it exports more and imports less, then it means that it will have a surplus, and as such it's going to have more money to be able to sponsor other activities and develop its nation. But unfortunately in Cameroon, what do we have? We are having the opposite of the economic equation. We import almost everything and we produce very less. So these dynamics will have to change. So when we look at the principle around economic patriotism, it's therefore one which encourages all Cameroonians to come together, to seek ideas, to put their minds collectively together in the spirit of patriotism. Because that's something that it's worth important mentioning. Today, based on the fact that the government has been ruling very poorly, most Cameroonians today are unpatriotic. They don't even love their nation anymore. There is this saying that goes that the country now belongs to a certain group of people. So certain groups of people own Cameroon. So the other people feel disconnected from everything that has to do with governance. And since they feel disconnected from that reality of participating actively in the governance of Cameroon, which is a fundamental and constitutional right, they feel that the country no longer belongs to them. So they begin to look elsewhere. They begin to identify themselves with others, and that is why the highest identification nowadays goes towards the Western world, where Cameroonians, when they get over there, they do their best to seek a foreign nationality. So Cameroonians don't see themselves today as a nation. We are seeing the crisis in the Anglophone regions. We are seeing what is happening in the north. We are seeing the tribal conflicts happening amongst us, amongst different tribal or ethnic groups in Cameroon. So this has led to an atmosphere of unpatriotism, and that is why I say this theme has a problem, because as long as certain issues pertaining to governance, certain issues pertaining to peace and stability, certain issues pertaining to the sector of culture, if they are not resolved, then automatically this cannot be achieved. But the mindset about economic patriotism is that Cameroonians will need to see themselves as one nation, as a country. Put aside the barriers that have to do with language, put aside the barriers that will have to do with ethnic groups, put aside the barriers that will have to do with belonging to a particular association or belonging to a particular school. Put all those barriers down, even belonging to a particular region. Put all those barriers down, sit down together and put in place strategies that would permit them to build a stronger economy, not individually but collectively. So those are things we don't see today. We don't see Cameroonians working amongst themselves. We see people working in groups, in tribal groups and the rest, and that is not helping us, because at the end of the day, divided we fall, but united we shall stand. Exactly. And that is the unity that we are looking for today. And without that particular unity, then it would be impossible for us to have the type of economic prosperity in patriotism which we desire.
They say divided a house cannot stand. Divided, so to say, a house cannot stand, but united, the African continent is indivisible. Now, we just got indications that Dr. Stanley is back with us. Dr. Stanley, can you hear us from this end? We're still unable to get you. Okay, why that was just a testing while we're hoping that connection actually establishes itself back again. Now, youth employment or youth unemployment, so to say, in Cameroon and Africa is one of the principal reasons behind this rise in immigration for, say, youth, the young generation wanting to move to other countries, like you mentioned, in Europe, to the United States, and a host of other countries. Now, the president mentioned during his speech that over 12,000 new businesses were established in 2023, and this resulted in the creating of nearly 22,000 jobs, direct jobs, I must precise, in Cameroon. Now, looking at the statistics, when you look at a nation of over 27 million people, now, do you think that's really a balance?
When you talk about 22,000 jobs, well, that's really small. That's really small for a population of about 30 million people.
Yes, they
Now,
acknowledge the fact that it's actually small, but then how can this problem be addressed? Because it's not just a regional problem. It's not, say, from region to region. We are cognizant of the fact that we've had challenges. Cameroon has faced challenges over the years, and still these challenges are still yet under review. But then with this, how can the government of Cameroon address this problem so it doesn't escalate?
well, it has already escalated. The problem has already escalated. And I think that to resolve this issue, there are so many things that we must put together. I think the first thing we are going to realize is that in Cameroon we have a lot of old people still in power. So we have people who have crossed 60 years and who are still working. So why don't they go on retirement and give place for the youths? So that's the first thing. Now, secondly, if we want to build a strong economy, there are certain things that we must put in place. And those things we have to put in place is, first of all, our productivity. So our productivity is necessary for us to raise our economy and make it powerful enough to sustain everything we are about to do. But to raise our economy, we have to get involved in all processes that would transform our primary products to secondary products and to tertiary products. So that will require us to create a lot of enterprises and a lot of industries, and these industries will be able to employ so many Cameroonians, and the youth will be able to provide their services, and that will create a lot of jobs. So if we want to create jobs, it means that we have to industrialize our sector, our economic sector, which is what we are lacking today. So we realize that we only extract primary resources and we export them, whereas we need to transform those primary resources, and to do that we need to engage in very massive industrialization. Africa, and particularly Cameroon, has a lot of natural resources which could be used to build so many different types of industries, whether it be industries for batteries, whether it be industries to produce energy, to produce fuel. Because right up to today, we don't yet produce fuel. We just extract petrol, we import it to France. France has to produce petrol for us and export it to Cameroon, and we buy at a higher price. So why don't we engage in constructing more industries and more services that are going to absorb most of our youths and give them employment? Now, the next thing will be to sponsor projects which are being introduced or by the initiatives of youths. And to do that, we need to actually finance those projects. So, as I earlier on said, we have so many youths today who have good ideas, nice ideas, but unfortunately, due to the issues of corruption, due to the issues of favoritism, due to the issues of nepotism, due to the issues of tribalism, it is practically impossible for them to be able to be granted those finances which will require them to implement those projects and also create jobs for other youths. So that's the second thing. The third thing is the type of educational system we have, which the government will need to work a lot on. It is one which should be able to permit youths to be able to make use of their knowledge practically on the field. And as I earlier on said, that we have so many youths today with certificates,
Yes.
but no savoir-faire. And it becomes a problem, because if you have a certificate and you don't have the practical knowledge, then automatically it will become very difficult for you to get a job. So our educational system will have to be completely reviewed, so that it should not be specifically theoretical, but that it should also have practical aspects, and that it should be a balance 50-50. And I think that by doing that, it will be able to help youth to be more creative. So round the clock, we realize that the main issue here is all about governance. I think that if the governance of Cameroon changes and we are able to implement the previous strategies which are earlier on said, then I think that we shall be able to absorb most of these youths that are jobless. And finally, I would like to add that the government could use other strategies. I think, for example, Cameroonians are very smart. The government has realized that so many Cameroonians are leaving Cameroon to go to Europe, America, and Canada. And of course, those being chosen are not any type of Cameroonians. They are those who have a practical know-how and those who are quite smart and intelligent. So what could the government do? Instead of struggling to hinder those Cameroonians who are struggling to leave the country, like what happened a few days ago, where there were so many teachers, nurses, and medical doctors who were being blocked at the airport, what they could do is that, okay, they sign contracts with these Cameroonians and say, okay, no problem, we'll let you go, but we are going to impose this and this tax on you. You see, you let them go, and you pick others who are here, who are jobless, because nevertheless, those who are going are leaving vacant places.
Yes.
And those places could be replaced by those who are here.
Especially when the government is yet unable to be able to employ everyone.
Exactly. So they could take advantage of that. So that's something that the government could capitalize on. And not only doing that, the government could say, okay, if Canada loves Cameroonians, America, and Europe, there should be a reason behind it. When there was a previous concours in France, where they had to choose, there are usually concours in France where the government chooses foreign or African medical doctors to actually join the French health sector. But we realized that majority of those who were chosen were from Cameroon. There was a particular specialty where we had almost 60%, 70% Cameroonians. So it means that there is something, that there's a message that is going across. The message that is going across is that Cameroonians are very hardworking, Cameroonians are intelligent, Cameroonians are creative. And that is something that we have experienced and have seen when we go to other countries. We realize that we have a very high standard. So if that is the case, so why should the government not devise a mechanism to improve on Cameroonians' aptitudes and capacities, so that these could be sold out of the world? We have so many advantages, especially when it comes to bilingualism. Speaking French and English, Cameroonians survive anywhere in the world. So they will obviously be preferred to other nations where you just have a language which is French or another one which is English. Cameroonians have that capacity to be able to adapt easily with both languages. Even when you look at our bijurial legal system, common law, le droit civil, it's easier for Cameroonians to adapt. So the government could capitalize on some of these things and say, okay, we shall prepare certain group of Cameroonians to resolve the employment issues. Okay, we shall work hand in hand with these foreign countries through their embassies and actually send some of these Cameroonians out there to reduce unemployment, but keeping them in the mindset of the fact that they have to come back and contribute for the development of their countries. And that is how some of the Asian countries developed. When you look at China, you look at Japan, you look at South Korea, but everything they are doing today are foreign intelligence and studies which they actually carried out in America, in Europe, and that's where they took all the ideas, came back to their country and developed it. I think that we could use this as a strategy, use our youths, and actually develop our nation. So if the government sees this in a different way, I think that we can capitalize on it instead of trying to prohibit or prevent youths from going out. We could let them go and fill in the vacant places with other youths who don't have jobs. Why trying to create the necessary economic environment which can actually prone development and actually eliminate unemployment?
So the government can actually look for solutions within the current problems. Now, as we gradually come into the end, it's unfortunate due to time constraint, we might not be able to exhaust this particular topic as a whole, but definitely we'll be coming to it in our subsequent editions. But then, looking at everything happening, we're looking at a Cameroonian government that is trying to ensure that the youth are actively involved in the economic emergence of the nation. With that in mind, what's the way forward to you as a young politician?
Well, I strongly believe that the way forward for Cameroon's development is that our youths should first of all be conscious of the fact that they represent the future of tomorrow. There is no nation that can develop without the active participation of its youths. And we young Cameroonians are that active force that would lead Cameroon to its sustainable development. But what we must know is that our environment is being dictated by certain principles, and we have political principles which actually apply and which actually have a very strong impact in our development. So youths will have to stand up, take their constitutional responsibilities and their rights to vote and take part actively in politics. And that is why I actually launched a movement called Youth in Politics, because as Madam NJIX earlier on said, I declared last month my candidacy to take part in the 2025 elections in Cameroon as an independent candidate. So I launched this movement called Youth in Politics to remind all youths of their responsibility vis-a-vis the development of our nation. So we will have to get involved, and we know that to actively get involved in politics in Cameroon, you are eligible as from 18 years to actually take part in municipal elections or legislative elections, and from the age of 20, you can take part in presidential elections. And at the age of 35, you become eligible to actually drop your candidacy for the presidency. So I am 35, and I strongly believe that if we, the youths, stand up, because these issues we are facing today, everything going on today, high standards of living, political issues, political instability, wars, and the rest, for over 40 years now, we have been experiencing these things, and we have seen that there is no change. So it's time for Cameroon to try something new and to actually see the potential of their youth. And to do that, we must get involved. So get registered on electoral lists, participate in political debates, participate in political events and activities, chip in your ideas, because I strongly believe that the continuity and the development of Cameroon lies in the wisdom, intelligence, and creativity of all young Cameroonians. So we have to do that, and that is what is necessary for us to be able to take Cameroon to the next level. We have to be conscious of all the things which we can do. We have seen our potential, we have seen all the issues, and we have the solutions to these problems. I strongly believe if we are given the opportunity, then certainly we shall make Cameroon a great nation.
Cameroonians are the future of the nation. Thank you immensely, Dr. ASONG Michael, for your contribution to this edition of Talking Point.
Thank you, Madam Jakes, and thank you to our viewers.
Thank you immensely, ladies and gentlemen, for taking our time to join us on today's edition of Talking Point. Thank you for trusting the Pan-African channel for you, Media Africa. We say it's on this note that we draw down the curtains of today's edition of Talking Point. Meanwhile, do stay in company of our programs.